All right. Well, Matt, thanks for joining us. I always like to kind of get started with how'd you begin your journey into early care and education? But for you, it might be a little bit different. Like maybe what was the beginning of starting to provide transportation to early education?
Yeah, it is a real interesting story. Our our owner of our company, Brad Hudson, has been in the transportation industry for probably 27 years now, and he was with another company. And most I guess transportation companies, they're always looking for the big contracts. They're looking for, the big school districts or government contracts, whatever it may be, so they can sell, you know, hundreds of buses at once.
Yeah.
Um, he really enjoyed the personal aspect of the early education and childcare, private schools and the smaller ones that weren't, part of these big conglomerates and getting, all the uh, buying in on district power and that kind of thing. And he developed relationships with a lot of mom and pop type childcare facilities. And then as he kind of got more known and was going to some of the conventions and things like that, he would meet some of the kiddie academies and children's lighthouses and some of the bigger groups. And he kind of, developed his own little niche in this market. And the company he was at wasn't real happy about it. They're like, look, you need to focus more of your time on these bigger contracts, government, bids, so that you can sell more at once. And he said, I kind of enjoy what I'm doing here. And he was very successful at it. They just wanted, always wanting more. So
Wow.
he said, you know what? And it was about 10 years ago now. He said, I'm going to go start my own company. And so he left and went out on his own, got about 3 employees doing everything, and started selling buses predominantly in the early education and child care industry.
I
And
love it.
yeah, he really he felt that was his calling. And so much so that whenever he left and started, he immediately had all of these people who he had been, serving for the last 10, 15 years followed him and became his first customers. So he had an immediate built-in base of customers to start from. And that's kind of how we got started. A little few employees and a small start, but we've grown and now are probably one of the top producers of MFSAB buses in the industry.
I love it. What a beautiful story. I think early care and education and childcare in general is such a unique industry because, we're talking about taking care of people's most precious little ones and
Exactly.
educating them. And what he probably recognized very early on is we're a relationship driven, nurturing kind of business. So I'm not surprised at all that they followed. Um,
And it's funny because he still has some of his very first customers, and some of them were just starting their businesses, and now they have 4 or 5 locations, and they still always want to call and talk to Brad. It's kind of it's kind of, he always says it's like a big family,
yeah.
and it really is.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. So, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because transportation is something that a lot of our childcare center owners and directors, some do it, some don't do it, some have questions, some might want to do it, but might feel a little nervous. And so, could you walk us through some of just the basics around safety features and compliance standards? I know you mentioned that MFSSA, I think. Anyway, take us through it.
MFSAB, that stands for multi-function school activity buses.
Okay.
And it's a little different from a school bus in that you'll notice right off the bat they're normally white instead of yellow.
Hmm.
Um, so still real high visibility, but only school buses have the school bus yellow, they call it. That's the actual color, is called school bus yellow.
Huh.
Interesting thing about the school bus yellow, it came about in 1939, and they did research and found out that a mixture of orange and yellow is the most noticeable color from your peripheral vision out of any other color, even red. You still notice school bus yellow is the number one color that you'll notice. So therefore, it's on school buses. And so being a multifunction school activity bus, you have a lot of the same features, a lot of the same construction, a lot of the same safety features, but the things you don't have, you won't have your stop sign, the stop arm that comes out,
Mm-hmm.
or off the bumper. Some of them have the little thing that comes off the bumper, and you won't have the flashing lights.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is multifunction school activity buses are not made to be picking kids up from their house and dropping them off, on the side of the road, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're made to be, and a lot of school districts have both. They'll have regular school buses to pick kids up from home and drop them off at school, and they'll have multifunction school activity buses to take teams to sports events or field trips or something like that. But you're not going to be picking them up at home on the side of the road or dropping them off somewhere on the side of the road. You're usually picking them up in a parking lot in a more controlled environment, so you don't need the stop signs and you don't need the flashing lights. So the majority of our business, still to this day, now we do business with school districts as well, and we can provide the traditional yellow school buses, but the majority of ours are private schools, are either corporately owned or individually owned, early education centers, and things like that. So they're not needing to pick up and drop off at home. And so we do, ours are white, um, but the construction on them on an MFSAB is going to be every bit as durable as what your normal school buses are. And the thing that we run into more, that we'd like to kind of educate people on the safety of, because people just don't realize how safe these buses are. The the construction of a school bus or an MFSAB, because like I said, they're built the same. They have a steel cage, and I have pictures of it. What I'll do after we get through with our talk, I'll provide the information we talked about, and I've got pictures of everything that we talked about. But they have a reinforced steel structure. If you can imagine, if you've ever been drive by when they're building a house and they don't
Mm-hmm.
have the walls on yet, and you can just see all the studs and everything in there, that's exactly what, if you peel the skin off of a school bus or an MFSAB, that's what it looks like. You have this steel cage that goes all the way around and protects that bus. So that's going to be, there's federal motor vehicle regulations that require that. I think it's 220 and 221 that require that steel cage when you're transporting kids. And what it does, it protects against not only side impact, but it protects against rollover in the case that it rolls. And it's scary, but if you've ever seen a picture of a school bus that's rolled over, a lot of times they can just upright it and drive it off because it doesn't collapse. It's dented up a little bit, but it's still very much intact. And as parents, that should make you feel a little more reassured about your kids traveling in them.
I agree. I agree. So, since in the world of childcare and early education, our regulations vary state by state by state. And
Yeah.
so, I know you're a local Texas provider, but could you give us a sense? And I don't know if maybe you don't work in other states, but are you able to serve childcare from other states? And how do you make
Yes.
sure that it complies, with the state regulations?
We are nationwide.
Okay.
We sell buses coast to coast. Our main locations, we have a location. Our headquarters is here in Cleburne, Texas, which is just south of the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. And then we have a service center on the north side in Lewisville, Texas. So we kind of have the top and bottom of DFW, which is a crazy, crazy growing area. Then we also have Orlando, Florida, and we have a service center there, and then we have sales staff throughout the. I would say our our backyard is going to be the deep south from Texas to Florida. We cover all in between, have salesmen in a lot of the states there.
Yeah.
But we do sell, I mean, up into Minnesota and Washington State and all over. One difference that we are a stocking dealership. A lot of dealerships are what I would like to call an ordering dealership. So if you need a bus, I'll order it for you. It'll be here, 12 to 18 months from now. We stock inventory. So normally you can call us and say, "Hey, I need a bus," and we can get it to you really quickly. And it's been good for us because we've actually had some people cancel other orders when they're like, "Wow, I can't wait a year and a half to get a bus. I need it now."
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of an upfront cost for us, but it pays off in the long run because we're able to provide for our customers. So being that we are nationwide, we do have to stay atop, and our salesmen are very, very educated on all the local laws. Um, the main thing that we try to do, the federal motor vehicle safety standards go to all states,
Hmm.
and each state will either have their own addendums to, hey, we're going to hold to this, but we require, XXX. So
Hmm.
they may have more standards, or some of them may just say whatever the federal motor vehicle standard is, that's what we'll go by.
Yeah.
So we kind of use that as our bar. That's the minimum, and everything that we send out is going to meet that federal minimum. It's going to have uh, the roll cage. It's going to have the compartmentalized seating, between the seats. It's
Hmm.
going to have a fire extinguisher and a first aid kit. It's going to have the high visibility tape on the outside, the rub rails on the sides, everything that the federal level says, hey, this is what we require. That's going to be our standard.
Hmm.
Um, so you're not going to run into anything that doesn't at least meet the federal standard. Now, your state may have, and I don't know any right off the top of my head, but
Sure.
some odd requirement that not the other states do. We can find out what it is, and we can take care of it. I don't think we've come across anything that we can't provide. Um, but it does make it a little tricky. We have to be careful. Just what we have in stock may not be right for everybody, but we can get it that way. We
Yeah.
can make sure that every standard you have in your state is being met.
I love it. So if I were brand new to this, which I'm not a spring chicken, owned and operated my own centers, didn't do transportation from my particular site locations in California, but if I were to open up my schools again today here in Texas, transportation would probably be something I would do.
Yeah.
So what are some of the common misconceptions that maybe someone comes in and they're just kind of starting their exploration, they're considering beginning to do transportation. What are some of those common misconceptions that might surprise people?
Um, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we see is that you have to have some kind of special license to drive that bus.
Mhm.
In some instances, you do. Um, if it's 14 passenger and under, which most of the short buses, as we call them, the smaller buses are 14 passengers plus the driver.
Mhm.
So that allows you, and this is another caveat, in most states, if it's 14 passenger and under 26,000 pounds, at least in Texas, that allows you to drive it with a normal license. You don't have to have a special license. If you go larger, like 16 passenger or 27 passenger or 30, then you need a CDL with a passenger endorsement in most states. Like I said, we need to check. Each individual state is different, so they do have their own. But the smaller the smaller buses that we sell, the 14 passenger buses, most of them are on a chassis that is very similar to a passenger van. I tell
Mhm.
people if you can drive a Suburban today, you can drive one of these buses. It's not and they're always shocked when they get in them and drive them. They're like, oh wow, this is a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Um, So it's not something. I think a lot of times people think, oh well, I'm going to have to get special licensing. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do this, and a lot of times you don't have to do that. You will have to have a need for it. I know a lot of school districts now are starting to get into the aftercare uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
industry. I've talked to a lot of our centers, and hey, we're running competition now because the schools are starting to do this.
Yep.
So if there's not a need for it in your area, um, it may not be the right thing. Not every early education center is going to need uh, a bus.
Right.
Um, as much as I'd like to sell every one of them,
Right.
um, it's funny, we have some who have done it in the past that are not doing it anymore, and we have a lot of new ones that are starting to do it.
Okay.
Um, it depends. The after school market is getting, I think, larger, tend to growing with. I've had a lot of non-traditional after school programs buying buses from us
Yeah.
that are doing uh, you know uh, karate
Mhm.
and athletic type gymnastics, that kind of thing after school. And
Yeah.
they're seeing this market grow, and they're like, hey, we want. In fact, I had a guy from South Carolina, and he's bought 3 buses from us in the past year. And he was going to do, he actually did, and he sold them. He had some vans, and when he found out about some of the laws that are involved in carrying children in vans instead of buses, then he was like, "Ooh, I need to get rid of these vans."
Yeah.
And South Carolina is, I think, the state that has the largest insurance settlement for a child that was killed in a van and should have been in a school bus.
Yeah.
So he became aware of that, and he's like, "Wow." So there is a lot. There you need to do a lot of research, and we can help with that too. We have all kinds of from the state levels and from the national levels of information that we can send to you, and that you can discuss with your legal team, people who make those decisions, so that you're not. That's the main thing, is we don't want anybody to be caught unaware. Um,
See, Matt, that makes me, if I was going to go out and buy a bus, I definitely want to work with someone like you. You already said
yeah,
three things that are bringing to my mind that you're not one of those, hard sell kind of folks. You
no,
actually care about having a long term relationship. You're not going to try to sell me something that maybe isn't going to suit my program, or sell me something if there isn't even a need in my
yeah,
area
yeah,
for providing transportation. So you've already proven to me that you really care about having a long-term relationship with your customer. And that impresses me right off the bat. You're obviously knowledgeable about some of the things that I would need to know, and I would
yeah,
need someone to educate me about. So that right there, I think, is honestly what it's all about, right?
yeah.
Forming those
And,
relationships.
and our motto, I guess, is we have Hudson Bus Sales, your trusted transportation partner, and that's what we feel like we are. I mean, telling you earlier about how we got started is, we feel an obligation to people who have trusted us for 10 years. They left another company we were at and came to do business with us here. And whether it be, you know, providing bus sales for them, whether it's providing some kind of service and repair, we do short-term and long-term rentals. If they have a bus breakdown, we can provide a rental bus to use till theirs, gets fixed. We do full graphics,
Wow.
whatever it may be. We feel like we can help, as much as somebody needs us, because I mean, that's what relationships are all about. If the only time you hear from us is, hey, you need to buy this, you need to buy this. No, we don't want to be that. We want to be, if you have a question, you call us. It may not turn into a sale, or you may end up buying from somebody else, but at least we can help. We always feel like if we can educate you, then you'll make the right decision.
I couldn't agree more. It's exactly the kinds of relationships I love to build as well. So, if I hear of one of our customers that's looking for somebody, starting transportation, I'll send them your way, Matt.
Yeah,
So I've already learned a ton just in our conversation here today. I love this idea that if I don't need to expand, you're going to educate me on even how to figure out if the need is real in my community. And the fact that you're willing to go that extra mile and not only help me solve a problem, but improve my business, improve my service, right?
Yeah.
The other part of this that I have to say on behalf of you too is I reached out to you. We didn't know each other, and I was really just looking for sort of a bus safety checklist.
Yeah.
And you right away provided one to me, and I used it. I put it into our one place software and kind of showed it to some folks that were looking to do something very similar. And so it's that idea that we can all kind of help and share knowledge. So, um, I know in advance you had some resources you brought with you, and we're going to link those out for anyone that is interested in learning more about transportation, making good decisions about whether or not to start transporting or how to go about buying a high quality bus. So, if you were to leave us with, two or three final thoughts, um, what are some of those common pitfalls that can happen
Yeah.
that someone needs to watch out for?
I think the biggest one, and we kind of talked about this earlier, the the biggest mistake that people make when they're getting into, I've got an early education center, and I want to start this. I want to start, picking up at school and bringing them to my center. Um, the biggest mistake they make is looking, okay, I want to spend as little as I can. And so what they do is they say, hey, I can get a 4 or 5 year old passenger van, and that'll work. That'll work for what I'm doing. Well, it will to a point. Um, if you never have an accident, you'll be just fine on there. But in our litigious society, and you know how it is. I mean, if
Absolutely.
there's any way they can come after you, they will come after you. And the all the safety features that go into the school buses and make it the safest vehicle on the road today. It is less than 1% of the accidents that school buses are involved in ever involve a fatality,
Wow.
because it's such a safe. In fact, I posted it on our social media here a couple weeks ago. There was an accident that happened where it was caught on camera, and a truck hit the back of a school bus going 40 or 50 miles an hour,
Ooh.
and it completely demolished the truck, put a little dent in the back of the school bus, and everybody on the school bus was fine.
Oh,
Um, it was a miracle that the driver of the truck survived. But
yeah.
it's the kind of thing to where you go, huh? That's why we're putting our kids in school buses. If they
Yeah,
are truly our most valuable asset.
they are.
So the the thing that it's scary. It's scary to us, and we've turned people down before. We will not sell a a vehicle that doesn't meet the federal motor vehicle standards, to somebody, and they can go somewhere else and somebody will sell it to them. But the legal ramifications if something were to happen, even if your state doesn't have, uh, anything beyond the federal motor vehicle regulations, the lawyers for the other side are going to come back and say, well, you've got the federal regulations right here. Why weren't you following them?
I know.
And then you can't say oops and get out of it. But we feel like the vehicles that we sell, we know they are the safest thing on the road today. And if I can stress that enough, is, if you're looking to start, then let's start right. We do have, yeah, everybody says, well, I can't afford the cost of it. And costs have gone up. I mean, everything has. You could buy a Suburban 4 or 5 years ago for about $60,000, and the same one's $110,000 now.
Agreed.
So everything's gotten more expensive. But what we do have is, if you said, hey, I can't afford that, a brand new one, we have certified pre-owned. So because we have such a large volume of buses that we sell to, private schools and early education centers and things like that, well, whenever they go to trade in, we get them back. Well, they're only going 5 miles a day, around their little location. So they all have low miles. We go in and we will inspect them. And if either, it doesn't have way too high miles, or it gets too old, to where it just doesn't make sense to refurb it, we'll go in and refurbish the whole thing, make sure that everything works, make sure that it's all, up and running the way it should. And a lot of times people will come, we'll have a 10-year-old one sitting here on our lot, and people will look at it and go, well, this one's brand new, isn't it? It's like, no, it's 10 years old, but you wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot less expensive, but we even give a warranty with them. So you can, at whatever level you're at, we can meet you there. And I don't want people to think, oh, I can't afford a new one, so I'm going to go with a non-compliant vehicle and just
I
risk
would
it.
say it's exactly the opposite, right? You
Yeah,
can't afford to go use a
yeah,
passenger van because in the simple event of something happening, that's going to cost your program a whole lot more.
yeah. It literally, if something were to happen, and God forbid that a child be killed in an accident, then it would be the last thing your business ever does, because you
Yeah.
would not survive it. I mean, it would, the lawyers would come after you. We had a situation here, and it was with a public school bus, but in a little town next to us, that a 5-year-old was hit by the school bus. He got it over underneath, and I don't think the driver was at fault, but I guarantee you there will be lawsuits for it. And it will probably, it's a travesty that it happened on both ends, but
Yeah.
it just is what happens. The lawyers will come in, the legal system will run roughshod, and they'll try to get as much money out of you as they can. So I would hate to see somebody. I would almost, well, I really would. I would rather see you stay out of of offering transportation at all.
You're
Do
right.
not do not do it if you're not going to do it correctly,
That's
and
right.
that's to protect you. I mean, because you will not have a business, and it will ruin your life if something happens. I mean, I
Yeah.
can I can honestly say that from experience. It will ruin your life, and it will be the worst thing that ever happened.
And I think you and I both can agree, and so would anyone listening. The kinds of people that get into the early care and education business and taking care of kids
Yeah,
care deeply. They're nurturers. They want to do things the right way. They don't
they do.
want to cut corners because they don't want anything happening to a child.
Yeah,
Always safety first. And Matt, thank you. Thank you, because it sounds to me very much like I could highly recommend Bus Company, just for the fact that you have those same core values and philosophies that I think everyone in the industry has as well. So final parting wrap up thought. I like to ask people, do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you'd like to share with us?
I do. You've heard of C.S. Lewis. I'm sure you probably have heard of him, and he has so many quotes that are just incredible. But one of my favorite ones that he said was, "True humility is not thinking less of yourself; it is thinking of yourself less."
Ooh, really
And
good
that's
one.
it is a good one, and it's something that we you know I like it, and as a company, I feel like that's what we try to do, is we try to think of, you know and this is one thing that the owners always said: if you take care of your customers, then you don't have to worry about the business. Like I said, we're here to educate. Are we here to sell buses? Yes, we are. But we're here to take care of people and help them make the right decisions. I mean, everything's a people business. This is a people business, and
Agree.
people want relationships with people that they can trust and that will be there for them. And we don't always get it right, but we're going to keep trying until we do. Everybody makes mistakes, but we're going to make them right. So
I love it.
yeah, it's just something that we feel, if we can take care of our customers, and if we can come in and be the sounding board they need when they're looking. They may not know anything about, well, how do I run a fleet, how do I get this serviced, how do I do this, where do I go to get graphics. um, we can answer any of that for them, or we can point them to somebody who can.
I love it. I love it. Well, again, I am really, really honored to have you, Matt, and I'm grateful to know you. And if I'm ever down in Cleburne, which I'm a DFW gal myself, so
Well, there you go.
always possible, I'll stop by and kind of tour your buses and get a firsthand look and say hello to you and the team. But thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us, because I do think that it's an important part of the early care and education industry, people are doing a lot more transportation, and there's some safety issues involved, and we want to educate
Yeah.
ourselves and make sure we're making good decisions.
Well, I really appreciate y'all for reaching out to me because I know I've been in other industries before, and everybody kind of kept to themselves, and that's been the thing that's been so, I guess exciting and refreshing being in early childcare is that everybody wants to help everybody else. It's like, y'all's program doesn't necessarily fit with what we do, but you're incorporating it in there so that it makes it better for your customers. And to me, that's really great that you would do that. Wanting to get them as much information as they could, and I appreciate you reaching out to collaborate on things together.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for anyone, once we post this podcast, if you're looking for more information, we'll have some resources linked out for the Hudson Bus Company, and we'll send them your way, Matt.
I do have some. I'll make sure that I get them over to you to post. I've got kind of some of the stuff we talked about, the construction of the buses, and then I do have some legal things that you can read over about some of the, I guess, legal ramifications of choosing a van over a bus. And then I do have a bus buyer's guide that I can provide too. That kind of, it's very basic. I mean, it's just like if you're thinking about getting into it, it has a little thing with about 10 questions in there that you need to answer that'll help you kind of
I
get
love it.
started in the right direction.
I love it. Resources are what we're all about, right? You got to start
Yeah.
somewhere and educate yourself before you get, too far out over your skis, as they say.
Yeah. And that's the one thing. There are people who have been, in early education that have been providing transportation for years and years and years. And they're great resources too, because they can know some of the pitfalls to avoid as well, from that side of it.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Cindy.